moving on, let's talk a little bit about volume. What is the volume of this cube? Well, and you know that it's a cube. It's a cube because basically it's kind of like a three-dimensional square. So volume is equal to the length times the width times the height. And so you can see that all of those different components are listed. I would call if you would like to label so you can see the height, the length, and then the width. What is the side length? Oh, I'm sorry, go back. What is the volume of this cube? So what does that mean? It means then volume for a square or for a cube is going to be the side cubed. I just wanted to break that down so you could see where those three sides came from. So it is length times width times height, but for our purposes today, I want you to concentrate on this particular formula since all of the sides are equal to one another. So the side then is 5 cubed, and 5 cubed means 5 times 5 times 5, or 125 units cubed. It's cubed because it's three-dimensional. We multiplied 3 numbers together. Just like in the last examples when we did square, then we were multiplying 2 numbers together, and that's why the exponent on our final answer is a square. Maybe you never knew that before. So now we have units cubed because we're talking about volume. So if it's 125 units cubed, then the opposite is true. If I were to give you the area, then you should be able to tell me one side length. So in other words, and this may be a little different for you, I know you've seen square root before, but if you put a little 3 out in front of it, that means the cubed root. In other words, what am I multiplying by itself 3 times to get 125? And of course, we know that that answer is feet. Oh, and I'm going to change one thing here. Instead of units, we can go ahead and add feet because this cube, we know what the unit is. We know that it's feet. Sometimes it's inches, sometimes it's yards, sometimes it's millimeters. So because we know feet, then I should have used feet cubed instead of units cubed. So you can go ahead and erase that and change it for me. So what is one side length? Then we would just find the cubed root of 125. So what I just did for you was a visual of what we're going to be doing, and now we're kind of getting into what I would call the drill and practice. So number one, we want to know what is the cubed root of 1,000? Well, what does that mean? It means what number do I take and multiply it by itself 3 times to get 1,000? So the first number that comes to mind for me is some number that would deal with a 10. And let's see if that's going to work. What if I choose 10 times 10 times 10? Well, I know that 10 times 10 is 100, and yes, of course, 10 100s is going to give me 1,000. So what is my final answer here? My final answer then would be the number 10. So this is just where I showed you how I got there. So that's what I would call the work. But the answer is 10. Don't say 10 cubed, because then if you say 10 cubed, that's going to get you back to 1,000. Now, is it true, like in our other examples, that I would need for the square, that I need a plus and minus? Well, let's think about that for a second. If I did negative 10 times negative 10 times negative 10, I would have 100. That's good. But then if I multiply it by a negative 10, look where I am. I'm at a negative 1,000. So that is not true. The same rule for squares does not apply for cubes. It does not. It's not always true that I would put a plus and minus in front of it for a cubed root. Moving on to number 2. Need a little space here. So now we have the negative cubed root of 8. Whenever you see the negative out in front of it, don't let that scare you. Just remember that they're 2 completely different ideas. So I'm just going to go to my operational symbol, which is the square root, and I'm going to say to myself, what do I multiply by itself to get 8? Well, we know that's going to be pretty small. I know it's not 1, because 1 times 1 times 1 is just 1. So let's try a 2. Let's see if that's going to work for us on this one. And I think that's going to do the trick, because that's going to give us 4 times 2, which is exactly 8. So here's where we show our work. Don't forget to bring down the negative. And that would just go with the 2. So remember again, it's 2 ideas. So the cubed root of 8 is 2, but then we have to put the negative in front of it. Now, if you're thinking, okay, how is that true and what am I looking at? Remember that the exponent only applies to the base. Remember, and you've heard me say that already a couple of times. So if I had 2 times 2 times 2, that's 8. And then I put the negative out in front of it, that's going to get us to our original answer. So I just wanted to show you that it does hold true in either regard. So our final answer then is negative 2. We're not talking about negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2. We're talking about the negative cubed root of 8, which is 2. Put the negative in front of it. I'm going to make sure that that's a little bit more clear than what you see right now. Moving on to number 3. Now I see a fraction, and don't let the fraction scare you. You're just going to take the numerator and the denominator, and you're going to just kind of deal with them one at a time. So the first part then is to look at the numerator. So I need the cubed root of 27. In other words, what do I multiply by itself 3 times to get 27? Well, we just found out that 2 times 2 times 2 is 8, so that's not going to be it. So we have to think about, what about 3 times 3 times 3? I think that's going to get us where we need to be. All right, so right now we know that the numerator is 3. And then let's take a look at the denominator. We're talking about 216. So I don't think it's going to be 4, because 4 is going to be pretty not a large number. It's actually 4 times 4 times 4 is going to give us 64. 5 cubed would give us 125. So it must be 6. 6 times 6 is 16, and then 16 times 6 is going to give us our answer. You may not use a calculator today. I will be emphasizing that as you're working through this particular target. I know that's the first time you've heard me say it today, but obviously using a calculator is not really our purpose. So make sure that if you have to, if you get to this point and you're thinking, I don't know what 6 times 6 is, find your 36, and then you might have to do pencil and paper. I will show you how to do that. Just some old-fashioned paper and pencil math to get you your answer of 216. So what does that mean then? Well, that's 3/6. Remember that there's a negative out in front of it. And I also know that negative 3/6 really simplified is what? Negative 1/2. So our final answer then would be negative 1/2. So what did I do on number 3? I found the cubed root of the numerator. Then I found the cubed root of the denominator. Then I simplified it. So 3/6 I know is 1/2. And then I can't forget that there's a negative out in front of number 3. All right, and our last page of notes today is just to evaluate exactly what we just did. And just make sure that you're answering the question that's being asked. So in other words, this says to evaluate 4 cubed. So if I'm starting with a cube, then I know that my answer is going to be larger than what I started with. So in other words, I'm going to have 4 times 4 times 4, which is going to give me 16 times 4. 16 times 4. If you just don't know 16 times 4, that's okay. You're going to learn it after working through this unit, and the drill and practice that you're going to do on the videos, as well as seeing the notes in your practice, you're going to know. So 4 times 1 is 4, plus 2 gives us 6. So our final answer then is 64. 4 cubed would be 64. Number 2, remember that the exponent only applies to the, wait for it, Yes, that's right, the base. Well, the base is -5. So what this means is -5 times -5 times -5. A negative times a negative is a positive. And then our final answer, positive 25 times -5, which is -125. Final answer. The exponent applies to the base, but the base in this case is all of -5. If the exponent, or I'm sorry, if the parentheses were not there, then you would have just said 5 times 5 times 5 and then brought the negative down. And if you're thinking to yourself, well, it doesn't matter, it's still the same answer. Well, you want to make sure that you're showing your process correctly to get there. Oh, I see a fraction on number 3. Don't be scared of it. It's going to be exactly the same as what we did back here on this example, number 3. We're just going the other direction. So we always want to take the numerator and then the denominator. So what does this problem mean? Five cubed on the top and then 8 cubed on the bottom. Notice that I just brought the negative straight down, and that's exactly what we're going to do. As far as if you just don't know 8 times 8 times 8, that's okay. You're going to just have to do some paper and pencil work. So let me show you what that looks like. So our final answer on that problem is -125 over 512. And if you're thinking, okay, well, how do I know if I can simplify that or not? You would have to find a number that can go into 125 and into 512. That's going to do it for working with squares and cubes, evaluating and realizing that cube and cube roots are opposite and square roots are opposite. Good luck on your homework. And actually, I don't want to confuse you. You will not have any homework for this particular night of watching your notes. You will do an activity in class tomorrow.